this first half. It's compelling to stick around and watch the second.
Finals footy on Fox, half-time, brought to you by RSEA Safety Workwear.
Yes, it seems that RSEA Safety need to be over there at Optus Stadium at the moment. It is unsafe for Melbourne supporters and their players at half-time. They trail by 63 points. As you heard at the end of the commentary there, it is the first time since the grand final of 1927 when Richmond was held goalless by Collingwood that a goal has not been scored by a team in a final at half-time. And I suppose, guys, the problem in that is the fact that it is perfect conditions to play footy. They just are all at sea, Melbourne. There's nothing else you can say. I'm disappointed for you guys, elated for the West Coast Eagles supporters out there, but it's a football lesson we're watching at the moment.
Yeah, they've smashed them around the ball. I mean, West Coast have been fantastic, and we saw that last night with Collingwood versus Richmond. So, I mean, they're plus 14, the Eagles, and Melbourne have only had 19 tackles. So, yeah, that's where the game's won and lost in finals, and then the extension of that is your big forwards get on it. But they've just been smashed around the midfield, around the middle of the ground, and
couldn't believe it, what we saw last night. I'm more stunned what I've just seen then. West Coast Eagles were magnificent. And I said at the top of this program, you've got to turn up. You've got to turn up at preliminary final time. And they didn't. Under no circumstances has a Melbourne player handled the occasion of a preliminary final. And we can show stats and we can show highlight and packages till the cows come home. West Coast have played like a man and Melbourne have come and turned up like boys. And that's the way the scoreline reflected, and magnificent from a West Coast point of view. It's what you want to do with a grand final spot in the line, Dermot, and Melbourne just haven't fired a shot.
Mental capitulation, and it's sad so for you guys. I know, you know, we love our footy and we expect so much more. Now, I'm not going to pick on somebody. They've lost everywhere. But when the Eagles kicked their third goal, and obviously third goal, 3 goals to nothing, inside 50s were 12-9. So they weren't that far off. Admittedly, the ball wasn't going forward greatly for Melbourne, but I've never seen, and I like the lads, and I'm a rap for Sam Frost, what he's done with his career. But I was told you I was worried about their 2 key backmen. I have never seen more errors by 2 key backmen in an opening quarter of final football than Sam Frost and Oscar McDonald. Now, I'm not levelling everything at them.
No. You couldn't.
But 3 goals came from their errors where they didn't place themselves right, or the Frosty runs through the middle, gives a handball that gets turned over, or they just didn't get it. They fell into the back, they fell over. It's a very sad tale, and I'm sorry for those boys. Let's hope they learn from it, and I think this game's gone completely now. Let's hope they can move on, but they are completely out of their depth.
But part of, I mean, Rizzy said there, 33 inside 50s Eagles, 20 to Melbourne.
Yep.
But the problem is it hasn't gone back out to come back in for the Eagles. It stayed in the forward 50.
Time in forward half.
It was just there all the time.
But in those first 3 goals, it was almost an even spread forward and back.
Well,
31 tackles.
It doesn't help when your most experienced player, Jordan Lewis, gives away a silly free kick and then handballs it straight to the opposition. So,
but even that one, even just as experienced as him, the handball went to Geordie in the middle from Jonesy. He's 2-3 metres off the boundary. What's he doing handballing under pressure to 15 metres out directly into the corridor? 31. I mean, that's a huge error before.
31 tackles, Eagles, 19 Demons. The question is, as you said, Gary, they didn't turn up. If you're not tackling and you haven't got the ball, what are you doing?
There's not one thing that they take out of that first half of footy. And that's the disappointing thing, but the great thing for West Coast, because they, on their patch, made them feel uncomfortable to the point, and Dermot, I take your point with those 2 boys, you're letting 20 off the mark, you're letting 20 off the hook, mate. They are fundamental skills of handballing.
I'm not letting them off either.
Well, don't.
I'm not either.
I know you won't, because it's not in your makeup, but this is then Melbourne supporters are sitting at home now crying in their beer, and that's fair enough. But hey, your team, our team, hasn't turned up, and that's what you cop in this game. If you don't turn up with intent, if you can't fundamentally handball under pressure, Dermot, in a prelim against a quality side like West Coast, you get your backside handed to you, and they're copping it right now, and they deserve to.
All right, 2 of those 6 behinds for Melbourne were rushed. The other 2 of the others hit the post. And then there were 2 misses by Petraka and Spargo from shots that were relatively gettable. But the point is they've just got nothing going at the moment. Let's go to the lab. It's a tale of woe. What about, though, the dominance of the West Coast Eagles, boys? Let's go in there now What do you got for us, fellas?
Yeah, well, it's to back up a lot of what you guys are talking about in terms of the fumbles, the poor handballs and all those things that Melbourne are doing on the back of West Coast pressure. And you spoke about it pre-game in terms of Melbourne, as a minimum, Jared, had to break even in the midfield.
Yeah, such is the power of the Eagles' forward half. And you look today at the season average of ground balls. Well, we come in, the West Coast, the worst ground ball side in the competition, 18th. They average minus 11. The Melbourne Footy Club are the second best ground ball side in the competition. They are plus 9 across the board. And you have a look today. They've been absolutely flogged in that area. The West Coast Eagles have totally dominated. They've created pressure for them. And Melbourne haven't been able to put any pressure on, because the kicking game of the West Coast has just kept the ball off them.
It is. They've got the ball back into the corridor with kick. They've also capitalised on Melbourne's turnovers through the middle of the ground. We mentioned the amount of handballs that Melbourne have missed. You see this one here. Maybe it was touched a little bit Brayshaw with the fumble, but then away they go. West Coast do hold their forwards at home, so therefore they're able to, on turnover, have those release points forward of centre, Jared.
It just... I guess was a summation of the pressure, wasn't it? When one fumble came, another one came. Was a turnover by foot, turnover by handball, little fumble here, a slip over there, and the West Coast just had a pretty simple game plan, just get it down, backed in the tall forwards. They had the Cracker brothers dominating at ground level. It just couldn't have gone any more the one way. And right now, Melbourne are just looking for some respect in the second half.
West Coast will continue that, we understand. And Melbourne need to get rid of handballs altogether, give Tom McDonald and the forwards a chance at least to score in the second half.
OK, West Coast Eagles fans, let's have a look at this, because Josh Kennedy, he is the key to your premiership success, and he has been dominant.
He asked pre-game what they wouldn't want to see Melbourne, and I said this, man, Josh Kennedy, he steps up. His last quarter last week against Collingwood Roosie was an indicator that he's starting to find a little bit of touch and got his timing back. He had midfield turnovers, which is, for him, from a forward's point of view, manna from heaven, because he just get on his bike and lead and hit up, and he just hit on the chest like that. And he was superb. 4 goals, 5 marks. He's on track for 8. He's going to carry him a long way.
He's just been a consistent at-the-ball forward, hasn't he? We're probably critical of some of the other key forwards, Derm, about going backwards. This bloke comes to the footy, keeps coming to the footy. And I think the good thing about the Collingwood game, Derm, is for 3 quarters, he did it, dropped some marks, but he just keeps doing it. Last quarter against Collingwood, really good, and then he follows on today because his game plan for a forward is really simple. I'll just keep coming at the ball, I'll just keep flying.
Couldn't agree with him more about the game against Collingwood. He was like a batsman scratching around to find form, and he suddenly hit a few to the boundary in the last session against Collingwood. Comes out this week, he's taken 4 marks inside 50. And I know the teams have pretty tough the other way, but they've taken none. He's taken 4 times. So it's an incredible outing for him in the first.
All right, brought to you by RSA Safety. It is a 63-point hiding that is being handed out at Optus in Perth. West Coast on the way to the grand final.
Finals footy on Fox, half-time, brought to you by RSEA Safety Workwear.
Welcome back. Optus Stadium is a picture of joy from the West Coast Eagles and abject misery if you're a Melbourne fan. Let's go back over there now. David King, the #1 analyst in the caper, is with Matthew Pavlich, who is over there. Boys, can you give us an insight into what is going on at that ground at the moment? West Coast Eagles lead by 63 points.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable. The atmosphere, firstly, the noise this crowd is making is quite incredible, Kingy. But what we can see at ground level, what we can see here is the Eagles forwards are really up the ground and creating all sorts of havoc for the Melbourne defence, Kingy.
Well, this is why the game's not living in contest. Willie Rioli, we've watched him closely. He's just roaming up post-stoppage as that extra forward, playing as another midfielder. And just look at him here, unaccounted for. This is why the quality ball use going inside forward 50 is obvious and clear. 10 marks inside 50 in a half of football, because they're just allowing Ryan, they're allowing Rioli, Lacroix to do their own thing across the middle of the ground.
Spot on, and it's very evident the likes of Lewis and Salem, Hibberd, Lewis, as I mentioned, their lack of accountability has been really quite disappointing on their behalf. They would have gone into this match thinking, if we can match them in this area. You look at this, there's 2 players right out the back, all by themselves. It was almost turned over. Lacroix gets a little slipper on it to kick a goal, but it's so evident at ground level how well the planning from the West Coast coaches. The other one we've noticed is obviously Gawn. The ruckman's basically making him defend in the back half. So a really structurally sound game from the West Coast Eagles.
He's killed him, Adam Simpson. There's no doubt about that. Dismembered that midfield. The Gorney plan was unbelievable. This is some sort of performance, Ed, and in front of this crowd, it's the loudest thing you've ever heard.
All right, boys, we'll leave it there. We'll come back. It's been 91 years since a team has not scored a goal in the first half of a final. Can Melbourne lift in this second half? Gary Lyon and Paul Roos sitting alongside me are imploring their side, show something in the second half, at least to set themselves up for next year. All right. In the meantime, the West Coast Eagles are saying we're going to punish this team and go all the way to September glory. They'll face Collingwood next week.
Finals footy on Fox half-time, brought to you by RSEA Safety Workwear.